Hello, I'm your host, Brian Callanan. How's the Seattle City Council responding after a shooting near a Central District high school that has families scared and frustrated? And how is the council planning to hire more police officers and raise officer salaries while facing a significant budget deficit? I'm talking with Councilmembers Tanya Woo and Rob Saka about these questions and the ones you're sending in too, next on Council Edition.
I am committed to making sure we responsibly reimagine public safety in the city.
It was this long line of people waiting to talk to me to give their thoughts and opinions about the comprehensive plan. And what I'm hearing is that people want to see more density.
All that and more coming up next on City Inside Out, Council Edition. Public safety, transportation, city planning, you name it. We have a lot to cover here on this episode of Council Edition. And to help us dive into these issues, I'm joined by Citywide Councilmember Tanya Woo. Thank you very much for being here.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And I'm also with Councilmember Rob Saka, who represents District 1. Councilmember Saka, good to see you too.
Hey, good morning. Happy to see you as well. Thank you.
Let's do this thing. And I want to start with public safety here because there's a lot of focus that's been happening recently on a shooting that was near Garfield High School in the Central District recently. Police are investigating this. A 17-year-old girl who was shot by someone she didn't know while she was waiting at a bus stop there. She was taken to Harborview Medical Center, has since been released. There was a second shooting just hours later, about a half-mile away, where a 37-year-old woman was killed. Police say it's unrelated. You just have a lot of families in the CD and around the city, I would have to say. Several shootings near Garfield last year as well. Councilmember Woo, what do you tell these families, these parents who are saying, we're scared?
It's heartbreaking what's happening, especially when it comes to young people. And so basically we just have to listen, and people who are closest to the problem have the solutions. And so I went to a community meeting on this past week, listening to Garfield parents talking about what solutions they want to see, especially around and inside their schools. And so came back with a whole list of notes of things to talk about with the mayor's office, with council members.
And with the school district too, maybe?
Yes, yes. Okay. And so it's going to take a group effort to be able to provide some relief, because it took us years to get this point. It's going to take us a couple of weeks, months, years to get to a place where people can feel safe.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And Councilmember Saka, if I could, I'd like to draw on another shooting that unfortunately happened in your district that you've said in council chambers has weighed heavily on you. I'm talking about the shooting death of 15-year-old Mubarak Adam at the Southwest Athletic Complex and Teen Life Center in West Seattle. It was Seattle's first homicide of the year. It happened back in late January. Recently, you announced some new security cameras have been installed in this facility, but this has been a really frustrating case. It's been difficult to figure out what happened, who's responsible. What's going on with this?
Yeah, so tragically, Mubarak Sharif Adam was, as you noted, Seattle's first homicide victim this year. And 15 years old, student of Chief Sealth International High School. There's been a lot of frustrating elements of this particular case. And, you know, some of it relates to the city, some of it relates to the school district, some of it relates to broader state law. And I am committed to making sure that the family has the answers that they need. I am here to demand justice for Mubarak and make sure if any accountability needs to flow from that, we have that. But one of the most frustrating elements of this, I'll be honest, Brian, is that, you know, under a new state law, which is modeled substantially after Seattle City Ordinance, it provides for legal representation for youth, basically, before
people are under 18.
Which I support the principle. I think this particular law, as written, kind of even goes above and beyond the Seattle standards and requires it in certain cases, and at least the interpretation requires it in cases where police aren't necessarily seeking someone as a criminal suspect in a particular matter.
Just looking for information.
They just want basic information. And unfortunately, you know, I think what happened here was a miscarriage of justice where we're at today. And so I'm committed to doing what it takes at the city level, principally working with my colleagues and you know, state legislative colleagues at the state level to hopefully address this statutorily in Washington State.
Yeah, and there's a part of this that bothers me too, and I've been talking with the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs about this. There have been a number of young people who are maybe first generation, second generation immigrants to our city who end up getting caught up in these shooting cases, in these, unfortunately, these murder cases. And I don't know if you have a take on that, because this is a very potentially vulnerable part of our community that's becoming the victims in these cases. Any thoughts there that you wanted to share?
Yes, I think every case is different and unique, but in a way, I think we need to do more engagement outreach, especially to our communities of color, immigrants, refugees, non-English speakers. And how do we get people involved, or parents involved in their children's schools who, most of the time, the children are the ones who are running the household because they get interpret and speak English for their parents.
Yeah.
How do we get parents more involved in their schools? How do we get more parents involved in government processes so they could see what's happening in their child's lives? And then how do we allow for more programming, not only just for children and community centers and libraries, but for parents as well, to interact and build that strong family structure?
Yeah, always a challenge. Any thoughts on that, Councilmember Saka?
Yeah, look, I am the son of a Nigerian immigrant. And so I come directly from an immigrant and refugee background myself. And we need to do better. And if those stats bear out, like that people from immigrant and refugee backgrounds are disproportionately impacted by gun violence, would not surprise me, sadly. I'm here to do better. And I'm here to demand justice for victims of gun violence and violence, regardless of whether that came from police or a criminal actor.
Okay.
And we need to do better, and I'm here to serve. So
thank you. And I know it's a very frustrating issue too.
Yeah.
I can hear it in everyone's voice here. I did want to point out, as reported in the West Seattle blog, at least with the West Seattle situation, a public safety meeting with City School, other representatives, will be happening at Chief South High School on April 16th in the evening, if you'd like to check that out. I wanted to go bigger picture, if I could, with you here, though. The mayor recently held what he said would be the first of many public safety forums around the city. The first session was at the downtown library, featured not only the mayor, but our chiefs of police, fire, the care department, community assisted response and engagement, that 911 alternative, plus human services there as well. I was really struck by a poll taken by the crowd there and online as well. It's not scientific, but it showed that 76% of the people polled were either a victim of crime or knew somebody that was. Councilmember Woo, I just wanted to get some thoughts about that. Was that something that jumped out at you? What did you make of what you heard at that forum?
Oh, I believe it. Well, I was talking to a group of Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts who are about to become Boy Scouts, young people, and they're on Lake City, Aurora, and they've seen dead bodies because of the fentanyl drug addiction issue. Kids in front of Summit High School, 12th and Jackson. And so, unfortunately, we try to protect our kids from these, but they see it. They see what's happening on our streets. And so I think it's just trying to find out these hotspots. How do we address the issue? And fentanyl is a very deadly drug. It's exploding. I really appreciate last week also Fire Chief Scoggins debuted a program where they're offering buprenorphine. We're gonna touch on that a little bit. Yeah. Okay, great.
Put a pin on that for just a second, but I promise I will come back to that. Maybe Councilmember Saka, I can draw you in here too, because we had a viewer question come in about public safety on a larger scale. Here it is. Do you advocate removing some responsibilities from SPD and handing them over to other responders, allowing SPD to respond to true emergencies/crimes? I realize this process requires renegotiation of the SPOG contract, but that is presently in process. Thank you very much for that email coming in here. And I've talked with all three of Seattle's public safety chiefs about this. Our emergency response is changing. That's the message that I've heard here. But to answer Bill's question, does that mean redefining what police are used for or how they're deployed? What do you think?
First off, don't ask me to pronounce that word.
Buprenorphine is a tough one. I just kind of blazed right past it.
I'll butcher the heck.
It's a tough one. Yeah.
But it's an excellent question. And yes, I am committed to making sure we responsibly reimagine public safety in the city. And that means sort of modifying, subject to the collective bargaining process, but modifying the scope of calls and responses that officers traditionally respond to, and shifting some of those more sort of low acuity calls and matters towards
ones that are less serious.
To civilian-led responders. The care department, led by Chief Amy Smith, is great example of that, where we have responders, social workers responding to people in crisis and need, that they need some sort of response, but it's not necessarily a badge and gun response that they need. And so
person down in a doorway or something along those lines.
And so that capability is great. We're operating the care department today under a limited pilot program under a fairly narrow corridor of the city, more specifically in certain parts of downtown where the need is greatest during certain hours. So my goal over time is to grow, scale, and expand the care department to make sure it's a citywide 365 or 24/7, 365 operation, and we have that kind of response capability. It'll take some time to get there, but we need to do better.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. I want to move on to a related topic of hiring more police officers. And I know the council's been talking about this as well. The amount of sworn officers in the SPD, you just had a presentation about this. 913 officers right now, the lowest number it's been since the 1990s. And it appears the incentives the city has been offering, even as much as $30,000 for these lateral hires, officers coming in from other departments, that's not having the impact the council has been hoping for. Councilmember Saka, you were talking about this with Chief Diaz at a recent Public Safety Committee meeting. He brought up the idea of increasing salaries and possibly some other incentives. Here's a brief clip of what he said.
Sometimes pay is a good thing, but it's those extra incentives that show that we're investing in our people. And sometimes it's education, sometimes it's the vehicle, sometimes it's a master police officer program where they feel like that helps them in their career movement as well.
Hiring more officers, I know it was a big part of your campaign last year when I was talking with you. All the council candidates were talking about this. Is raising officer pay the answer to this issue of our police shortage? Is it other incentives? What's your plan?
It's all of the above.
Okay.
And we need a holistic, comprehensive approach to address the hiring needs. And by the way, yes, make no mistake, we need to hire more officers. And we're not going to alternative response our way out of our responsibility to hire more officers to restore our department to full staffing levels. But that said, some of the things that we've been trying so far haven't been working as well, including the existing incentives. So we need to go back to the drawing boards in large material respects. And consider other alternatives, incentives, and we learned about a few of those just now, and during that committee meeting. I also think, and we've done some great things so far with marketing and just to get more people interested. That's yielded some good initial results. I'm here to help build upon that work. But I think the greater opportunity right now, Brian, is related to two things. One, the process for how we source the intake process and how we kind of funnel them along from the time they apply to the time they're ultimately hired, if that's what happens at SPD. It's currently very bureaucratic. It's not at all in line with our peer jurisdictions, many of which are competitors for talent.
Right.
And then the second thing is officer morale. Chief.
The chief brought that up a lot.
Yep. Chief Diaz holds many, responsibilities. One of them, I think, is he's the chief morale officer of SPD. So I'll be looking to the chief's wise judgment, partnering with the mayor's office, my fellow colleagues, to find some solutions. To meaningfully address officer morale.
Okay, thank you. That's definitely a piece of this. Councilmember Woo, maybe I can guide this with another viewer question. What innovative processes or techniques do you advocate for hiring more police officers quickly? Increasing base salary to match Redmond, which is up over $100,000, and hiring bonuses are two ideas. Are there others? Some thoughts about this, please.
Yes, I think it's going to take a lot of different aspects to be able to solve the situation. Like Councilmember Saka said, setting the tone and morale going forward. And I remember this meeting, there were a lot of ideas thrown out there, but I don't know if they were viable. I remember a couple council members suggested, housing subsidies.
Right.
And so I think these are great ideas, and we should explore all of them.
Okay.
But also, I think we should try to solicit ideas from community members.
Okay.
I was really enlightened to see that a lot of our young people, our children, are interacting with officers in a very positive way.
Okay.
And so are we able to bring up the next generation of police officers in the community who are from community? I think is going to be especially important to making sure we do that outreach and engagement.
Got it. I need to ask the tough question, though, I'm hearing this idea of offering more money, more bonuses, things of this nature, but the city is facing a $230 million budget deficit. help me out. This feels like a pretty tough math problem, and I just wanted to get some thoughts about this. How do you do that, Councilmember Saka?
Yeah, we have a responsibility to balance the city's budget and spend and make sure our tax dollars are spent and invested wisely, and we're seeing outcomes for whatever we're spending. And yes, we need to hire more officers. I'm committed to doing that. We need to expand, grow the care department, committed to doing that. Public safety is very, very, very important. As we look to this $250 million and growing budget deficit, I'm committed to prioritizing public safety. I will say that right now. And that is the singular greatest need, I think, for our city right now. I'm committed to prioritizing that. And we need to look for other opportunities for consolidation, Brian.
Okay.
The canonical example that our colleague, Councilmember Strauss, always provides is like, okay, maybe there might be arborists in the Parks Department and SDOT and some other agencies, but do we need 17 different departments with arborists, or can they sit under one Parks, for example, whatever it is?
Yeah.
But we need to better kind of consolidate our functions, services, our lines of business, avoid duplication of efforts. I think we'll achieve some great savings through that as well. But public safety is really important. I'm committed to prioritizing that through these budget conversations.
Thank you. Councilmember Woo, some thoughts on budget, the deficit? What do we got? Yeah,
so I believe budget's policy. It's also a moral document, and we have to set our priorities, and public safety is one of them. And that's just being able to work together to find out what, Councilmember Saka said, find the redundancies, and how can we work cohesively together. And it's going to be a lot of tough choices. And so I think there's going to be a lot of really rough decisions and conversations to be had, but I think we're ready, and we are going to focus on this in the later half of the year.
Yeah, and I know it's in the back of your mind right now. That's why I'm asking about it here in the springtime. But is the idea of new revenue off the table, or how do you look at that? And we'll both have you chime in if you could. Councilmember Woo, could you start?
Oh, I know we're looking at the Progressive Revenue Task Force very closely and looking at those options they proposed, seeing if they're viable. And this was a group of people who have come together from all walks of life, and so we're leaning very heavily on them. Okay. And so I'm open to it, but wanted to make sure that we also hear from the greater community as well.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Saka.
Everything is on the table from my perspective. That said, we need to be very, very thoughtful about every single thing we do and be mindful and look around corners and be able to anticipate potential implications and impact of what we do. Because, I'm here to move away from well-intended ideas only. We need to see results, and we need to be able to contemplate what's going on. The Progressive Revenue Task Force or Revenue Stabilization Work Group or whatever the branding is called, it was a committee of experts who got together and collaborated across differences and came up with a number of terrific ideas. And I applaud the leadership and service of everyone on that commission. I think some of the ideas in there, and this is through no fault of their own, but some of the ideas in having some conversations with our central staff and budget experts aren't actually implementable, operationalized, able to be operationalized at the city because of state law preemption issues. And so some of those ideas that were presented as options in Seattle, like, for example, the vacancy tax and CEO tax, a number of other things, they didn't have legal review, and as a result, a few of those things, including a few things that during the campaign many of us suggested, hey, we're open to exploring, aren't actually doable. So everything's on the table, but I want to help set expectations about some of those options being presented as options that aren't, unfortunately, truly options through no fault to anyone that served on that committee. Okay. It sounds like there's a lot more to sort through there, but I'm looking forward to that conversation. While we're talking budget, let's talk transportation. And Councilmember Saka, maybe I can start with you here. You chair this committee, and you've been hearing recently about the state of our bridges. I wanted to talk about this first. Just kind of going up the ladder here. 9% are in poor condition, 57% are in fair condition, 34%, only a third of them are in good condition. SDOT essentially told the city that $10.5 million that the city has set aside every year to keep our bridges maintained isn't quite cutting it. Councilmember Strauss brought up the idea of maybe we just need a levy to pay for bridge repairs and maintenance. I just wanted to talk about that idea and what this means for the transportation levy the council is hoping to renew when it expires at the end of this year. Yeah, so I represent District 1, which includes West Seattle, who, look, I represent a community of people and constituents, myself included, who are still traumatized from the devastating impacts of having a protracted 2.5-year closure of the West Seattle Bridge.
Right.
And
that impacted Georgetown, other parts of your district too.
Every part of the city, our region.
Yeah.
And so we have a huge opportunity to do better for our bridges and make sure they're more functional. We invest in preservation and maintenance and modernization efforts for our bridges because, Brian, there's over 100 bridge assets across the city.
Right.
And as we know, as you noted, many are in a state of disrepair. So regardless of the size or scope of this renewal levy, even if we dedicated 100% of that towards bridge maintenance and preservation efforts, it still would not meet the need. So we need to think creatively about other funding sources, leverage heavily, work heavily in shared investments from our federal partners and federal grants, state, county, et cetera. Transportation is really a shared responsibility because we all benefit, the economy benefits, and people benefit when we keep people, goods, services moving safely and efficiently throughout the city.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Woo, I want to bring you in here, and if I could, I'd like to talk about your role as chair of the city's Sustainability Committee, which deals with the city's environmental goals, because we had a viewer question that kind of related to this. Robin asked this. Is the transportation levy going to make the investments to get us to our goal of 82% reduction in transportation emissions by the year 2030? How is the city working on figuring out what investments will get the reductions we need? Robin, thanks a lot for the question. Some thoughts about this. This is really an intersection of some of these environmental issues and these transportation issues, too.
Yes, I agree. That's a really important question and something we're really looking into and examining because we want to meet our goals, and we realize the goal is quite ambitious, but how do we do it gradually? These things don't happen overnight. And so, but really excited that, Seattle, we're a leader in innovation when it comes to green technology and climate goals. And so I'm really honored and proud to be able to delve deeper and figure out a plan on how we get there.
Yeah, and I know this work is just starting. Councilmember Saka.
Just starting at the early end. Some initial thinking from my perspective. We have an opportunity in this new levy to invest heavily in 3 core high-level areas.
Okay.
Bridge, road maintenance, preservation, modernization efforts, safety, a safe mobile experience for all, pedestrians, cyclists, vehicle traffic.
Yep.
And part of that, I want to help bring to life a once-in-a-generation investment in new sidewalk infrastructure. We learned, happy to talk about that opportunity more. 27% missing sidewalks throughout the city, unacceptable.
Right.
And finally, we need to take bigger, better, bolder climate action, and including by bringing to life new EV charging infrastructure throughout the city.
Okay.
And I actually just had a briefing from SDOT and people from City Light yesterday on this specific topic.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to work with my colleagues to make sure we are responsible in our commitment to the city, to the environment, and bring that to life.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I wanted to move on, if I could, to some concerns about the crisis of homelessness and our region's opioid crisis. The city of Seattle recently launched a program to allow paramedics from the Seattle Fire Department to administer buprenorphine in the field. This is the drug that helps stabilize patients being treated for an opiate overdose. And this is a look at the recent press conference we're seeing right here. Why is this program needed? I wanted to add some perspective here. I talked with John Scholes of the Downtown Seattle Association. He explained to me recently here at the Seattle Channel, our drug crisis is impacting our homeless people severely.
Well, in King County last year, we saw a record number of people die from drug overdoses.
Yep.
It's now the leading cause of death of folks that are living unsheltered in our community. That wasn't the case 2 years ago. So more than 300 people died outside that were living unsheltered from drug overdoses in King County. And this crisis is really centered in Seattle.
Councilmember Woo, you were at this press conference here. How's this program going to help?
I think it's going to help immensely. I am very excited about this program. And so basically the base of the program is that when firefighters go to the scene of an overdose and they're able to revive this person, they're going to give them this drug. I cannot pronounce it.
Buprenorphine, yeah.
Buprenorphine, yes,
I'll keep trying to help as best I can.
And so this helps them, fentanyl really changes somebody. They're not themselves. They're just craving their next hit, basically. So this drug puts them in a place that will subside their addiction cravings and be able to make decisions on how they want to see their life heading.
Yeah.
And I heard there are amazing statistics. Was it like 8 people since this program started within a week?
They're getting out there, yeah.
Yeah, getting out there, agreed to go into treatment, and then I think it was a 3 out of the 8. I remember it was quite amazing.
So having them stabilized is that first step, okay.
To make that choice.
Okay.
I think that gives us a fighting chance. Like my group, my volunteer group, we go out in the streets, 12th and Jackson, and we administered Narcan, we administered CPR, and it's just an ongoing issue these last 2 years, and this helps. I think this will help a lot.
Okay, looking forward to seeing that. I'm going to try to jam in a conversation about the comprehensive plan in 3 minutes, see how we do here. I just wanted to talk about this because there's a lot of public hearings going on about this right now. This is basically the roadmap to growth and density in the city of Seattle over the next 20 years. There's a document that's going to be due out at the end of this year. You guys are working on the council, and maybe Councilmember Woo, I can talk about this with you. The mayor just came out with his proposal about this. It would add at least 100,000 housing units to our supply over the next 2 decades. I know there's been a little bit of pushback on that. Critics say we need a lot more. The mayor says this is a floor, not a ceiling, says we'll have plenty of capacity for growth. I know you recently went to a community meeting about this. I wanted to touch on this. What did you hear? Where do you want to guide this conversation about growth?
Yes, I went to the comprehensive plan open house. At
Cleveland, right?
Yes,
Cleveland High?
High School,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
And so, yeah, it was quite amazing. People are really invested in this. And so I was this long line of people waiting to talk to me to give their thoughts and opinions about the comprehensive plan. And what I'm hearing is that people want to see more density. And so how do we I know that this is the draft plan. And so the mayor's office is taking in all these comments and going to produce a final plan, which the council won't see until about the end of the year.
Right, right.
And so I'm planning to go to all of the meetings and listen to what people have to say about it.
Yeah.
But it was quite interesting because, we had the transportation plan.
Oh, yeah.
That was 600 pages.
Right.
And then we had the comprehensive plan.
Some light reading there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councilmember Saka, just to wrap up on this thought about the comprehensive plan, I know this is an important issue in your district. It's all over the city here. Some thoughts about where you want to guide this conversation.
With the comp plan?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so comp plan.
Which I know intersects with the transportation plan.
Oh, yeah, so make no mistake.
Yeah.
Growth and land use policy is tightly interwoven, connected with transportation policy. And, I have right here for visual depiction.
Yeah.
Illustration purposes.
Look out.
This is a copy of the Seattle Transportation Plan, the draft proposed Seattle Transportation Plan.
That was almost too hot for Seattle Channel. Keep going.
Yeah,
right.
600 plus page document. I have it earmarked here. This is, by the way, front and back printed, two pages per sheet.
Right.
And in the comp plan, there is a transportation element that I'm still working my way through.
Okay.
But both of those things, the comp plan, so growth policy and transportation policy are tightly interwoven, and I think with respect to the comp plan, we need to let the process play out. We have a number of great community sessions lined up. Communities are already sharing their feedback, and I think we need to look what's been done historically. And the successes or failures of that, and as we plan ahead for the next 10, 20 years ahead, and growth is not a bad thing in and of itself. So
yeah, we got a lot to look at here.
Yes.
Thank you both for your input, and we will see you next time on Council Edition.